we do serve up warm tea so much inside of the leadership analytics space, and rarely do it.
Yep.
Even though we rarely do it, there are situations out there that are taking the gold standard and they're applying it, and they're able to point to these great people, operational, and value-based metrics
Exactly.
that doing leadership work actually provided the organization.
Yep.
So I want you to talk a little bit about, it's rarely done, but
Yep.
when you apply the gold standards, you can get results. But when you do apply it, it can also, there are times when you don't apply the gold standard, which unfortunately, right, when it's done, this is
that's
what
how
happens.
it's done.
And I want you to talk a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so this is where we kind of get to the core of our topic today, right? When we say norming makes me storming, well, here's where the storming begins.
That's right.
You said it makes us mad, and it should. And it should. So to your point about, hey, the gold standard exists. The gold standard exists for a reason, and it's rarely applied, but it is applied. And every time we've studied where it's applied, it has amazing outcomes, right? That's the summary of what you just discussed. And then we are also saying that the reason we believe very strongly that warm tea continues to be served in the leadership development analytics space is because it's rarely applied. And by the way, when it's applied in this construct called norming. It's interestingly at the attribute level. So there's no disagreement there. Everybody's collecting the attribute level information. Remember that one of the evidences that we're seeking. So that's captured really well. But at the attribute level, what happens is that, then those attributes don't continue to be tied to, first of all, they're not processed and they're not tied to outcomes, right? What's happening is those attributes are beginning to get normed. And that's the piece a little bit that when it's typically done, it's kind of always, within a vendor-owned database or norming, and that's where those attributes are normed, and that's what pretty much drives all the decisioning, if you may, for what leadership development ought to be. And I'll get into a little bit more, but I think you have a comment.
Yeah, I actually think what I want to do is put up the IPO highway again and tell you what I think I heard, because this is we have to make this simple for people to understand what's actually going on out there and why we're stuck in this warm tea kind of space inside of leadership development.
It's kind of room temperature tea, right? It's not being put in the fridge to be cooled down. Neither is it being put on the stove to heat up. So,
what I hear us saying is that leadership analytics and using the gold standard is rarely done.
Yes.
When it is done in those few circumstances, when you apply the gold standard, really great things start to happen. You get your hands on this really meaty outcome side of stuff. But the thing that's happening more frequently is this. So you may have an organization, especially like a vendor. Think about your big organizations in the US or really in any country that are running engagement surveys for you or running 360s. And they will say, we have some attributes that define some element of leadership.
Correct.
They have this input. And so they're going to give you feedback. They're going to give you feedback on these attributes. But instead of taking it through the leadership analytics IPO highway, they do an off-ramp and they compare and contrast your results to an industry database.
Correct.
So all of a sudden, I'm not saying these organizations don't have good attribute evidence. They do have good attribute evidence.
Yep.
But what happens is if you don't help that organization to put it on the IPO highway, and you off-ramp it to industry norms, what's happening then is we have Michael here, right? We have Michael going, okay, I just did for example, an assessment on my curiosity. And I found out that my curiosity puts me at the 70th percentile for supervisors inside of the CPG industry.
Yep.
He just got normed.
Yep.
He just
got
normed. They only used half of the
Yeah.
evidence that you
Yeah.
need to use in order
Yeah.
to have fully robust
Yeah.
leadership analytics.
Yeah. And not only did he just get normed, he better be Stormin, because that tells him nothing about what does that mean for him. Right.
That's
So,
right. How does
so
that help
norms.
him?
Yeah. How does that help him? How does that help him move to the outcome part of the equation? Because remember, you've got to have both pieces. I think norms, kind of, we've all heard norms, right? We all kind of understand norms as these social constructs. They're frames of reference. They're really, I think, tools that allow us to benchmark. Like, am I above where I need to be, or am I below where I need to be? And so they're completely legit. There's nothing wrong with a norm. I think we've said this as well, is that norms are great. They're legitimate statistically evaluated, information or tools that allow you to build a frame of reference. Like I said, to tell you, am I 70th percentile in the case of Michael? Well, what does that mean for Michael? Is he supposed to be at 85 for the kind of experience and impact he has, or is 70% okay? But the thing is, here's the deal though. The thing with norms though, Reg, is that you better be familiar and aware of what are you benchmarking yourself against. So when you off ramp, your point, and you're norming to a industry database, you have no frame of reference what that norm means for your organization's
That's right.
impact. Do you see what I'm saying? Unless you on ramp again, right? So if you bring those norms back into your IPO highway, you bring them back to the process and to the output that's specific to your organization, those norms mean nothing, and they should mean nothing, because they're really
That's
just
exactly
a frame
right.
of reference out there. And I've said another story coming up. I think I've said this to you before. So there's nothing wrong in norms, right? It's like I said, they're completely legit, and they're great. So I remember when my when our daughter was born, we took her to her first pediatric visit, 3 months, or I think whatever that was. And
yeah, you do it multiple months as your kids
you do it
grow.
multiple months. And so they gave us the norms, right? They said, hey, your daughter is 87th percentile of the height, for her age, and she's 55th percentile for the weight. And Shivani and I were like, that's great. But frankly, 55% initially sounds very concerning, right? Oh my God, like what's going on? Is our kid underweight? And we, of course, didn't freak out, but obviously we went and did some studying and research, and we realized that the norming wasn't based on the peer group of South Asian kids. It was based on the peer group of everybody in the mix. So it wasn't really referenced to her population group. You see what I'm saying? Now, when we go and we look at the, kind of her peer set, guess what? She was fine. So question is, norming is not necessarily bad, but please be aware, what norm are you actually being compared to? And what does that mean for you, right? What does that mean for your organization and your output? So to your point, I love your off-ramp, on-ramp an analogy here. It's a highway, right? By all means, off-ramp, provided you know how to get back on the highway. Because if you don't, then guess what? You're getting served warm tea.